This is the His and Her Money Show, where we talk about managing money, marriage, and everything in between. Now, here are your hosts, America's #1 money couple, Talaat and Tai McNeely.
Welcome back to an all-new edition of the His and Her Money Show with America's #1 money couple, Talaat and Tai McNeely. We are certainly glad that you guys are back here with us for another fantastic show. Man, we have a superstar lined up for you guys that's going to make this a power-packed episode that's surely going to help you get a hold of your financial situation once and for all. But before we get into that, let's get into the show sponsor today, which is ClearPoint. ClearPoint is your ally on the fight for financial freedom because they offer totally free credit counseling where you get to sit down with a credit professional, look at your credit report, and create a game plan of action to get your credit in a better place. To find out more details, all you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/ClearPoint. We're super excited that you guys are here with us because we're going to be talking with Jean Chatzky, superstar in the personal finance world. She is a fortified personal finance expert. She's an award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and the financial editor for NBC's Today's Show. And she's going to help us understand and realize some things that we can do to finally get our financial situation turned around. Whether you're single or married, this episode is for you. Let's check it out. Hey, Jean, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hello, Jean.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be with you guys.
And we are really happy to have you here with us because you have a wealth of knowledge. You have a ton of experience helping people all across the globe get their finances in order. So we are super excited that you will now be helping everybody tuned in to the show right now get their situations in order as well. But before we get into your advice, can you just take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what you are all about?
Sure. I'm Jean Chatzky. I'm the financial editor for the Today Show on NBC. I've written a number of books, including a new one. The title is Age Proof: Living Longer Without Running Out of Money or Breaking a Hip. It comes out in March. And I have a podcast as well called Her Money, which of course you can find on iTunes.
Love that. Awesome. We will make sure that we will include the links in the show notes. So, Jean, talk to us a little bit. In your opinion, why is merging money and marriage such a tough undertaking for so many couples?
Well, I've done it myself twice. And so I can speak from at least some experience. I think the tough thing is that we're under this misguided perception that when we marry somebody, all of a sudden we share everything and we have the same goals, the same wishes, the same wants, the same priorities. And hopefully you share at least some of those things with your spouse. But in reality, you're still an individual, and being that individual is what attracted your spouse in the first place, right? They say opposites attract. There's at least something different about you that made your spouse excited enough, interested enough to want to spend time with you. And those differences need to be respected. And that calls for at least some financial autonomy in every relationship. And so what I see is that when people aim to merge everything, often what happens is that because of division of labor in the household, one person ends up running the finances more than the other person. You know, that's understandable. We have so much to do in our busy lives these days. We can't double team on everything. But if one person becomes the yes person or no person when it comes to the finances, that relationship becomes a little too authoritarian and parental. And we need to be careful about allowing that to happen.
Yeah, that happened to us early in our marriage because we came into at the beginning of this marriage where my wife Ty here was the genius when it came to money and I was the fool, and I was making a bunch of bad mistakes in my past, and here we were coming together. So our initial thought was, well, since you have a finance degree, you work in the finance industry, you should handle our finances. And that dynamic that you just described happened. It was more of a parental authoritarian type feel because I wasn't involved. I was just being told the kind of results of, well, this is the budget and this is what you got. And it turned into something that we did not like because I wasn't playing my part. And so we learned that both of us had a role to play, and we both had to play our role if we were going to be successful as a couple when it came to merging these finances.
Right. And you both have the wants and needs of both partners have to be respected.
Yes.
Whether or not you are out in the world earning an income or a salary, whether or not you're the person managing the investment portfolio, the contributions of each person to the relationship have value and need to be respected as such. And that means each person gets a little free money to do what they want to do, whether or not the other partner thinks that's a valid expenditure.
Now, we've heard you discuss on numerous occasions and numerous platforms the importance of budgeting, especially for those trying to get a hold of their finances and trying to achieve some semblance of financial independence in their life. Now, when you throw in the dynamic of marriage, what advice do you have for couples to be able to learn how to get on the same page when it comes to budgeting their finances?
I think the only thing that really works is to save first. If you guys are on the same page when it comes to your saving and you're putting away, I'd like to see 15% for the future, for retirement, for college, whatever your savings goals happen to be. If that's being accomplished first, quite frankly, I don't care about what happens after that as long as you're not sinking deeper into debt. It's just a matter of making sure you're taking care of business before you go about spending for not just the things you need, but the things you want. If those spending goals are actually happening, you're going to be okay in the long term.
So what about the couple that they may have irregular incomes? How should they structure their household budget?
You got to average it out so that you pretend you have a regular income even when you have an irregular one. And so the key there is to just look backwards at the last 6 or 12 months of earnings, figure out what was coming in, figure out if it's predictive of what's going to come in the next 6 to 12 months, divide by 6 or 12, and then live on that baseline number. And when you have months where your income is greater than your actual income, you bank the savings and you pretend it's not there. And when you have income that's less, you live off the savings. And it works out in the end, but you have to be able to put the money aside, just like that 15% that I was talking about before. You've got to really be able to pretend that money is not there.
Great advice. Great advice. Another common question that we get is, how do we factor in child support payments, whether those child support payments are coming in or whether you're the one paying out? It kind of seems to throw some people off, or even alimony. Like, how do people factor that in when they're sitting there trying to structure their budget from month to month?
Again, you've got to really rely on the numbers. Whether your expense that you're dealing with is a child support or an alimony payment or rent or food or some other necessity. These are necessities. These are needs. These are not wants. These are not things that you can choose to blow off. And so as you figure out what money is discretionary, you've got to take your fixed expenses off the top. So we take savings off first, right? We're going to save that 15%, or at least we're going to aim to. And if we're not at that 15%, we're going to ratchet ourselves up slowly until we get there. And after that, we're going to take out our other fixed expenses, our car payment, our rent, our student loans, if we have them, our insurance premiums, our child support, our alimony, all of those things that go on that list of fixed costs. And if by the time you've subtracted all those fixed costs, there's nothing left, you got a problem. And chances are your problem is in your biggest expenses. It's in transportation. It's in the place that you've chosen to live. For a lot of people, it's in the amount they're spending on food, whether it's eating in or eating out. Something's got to give, but it can't be saving. So you adjust all of those other factors so that you can make good on the payments that are non-negotiable, like child support and alimony.
Yeah. And you just hit on an area that is super tough for a lot of people, and that's the food category on that budget, whether that's, like you mentioned, groceries or eating out. And many families struggle with saving money in this area. What tips do you have that could help them cut costs here? And now a word from our sponsor, ClearPoint. One thing we talk about all the time here at His and Her Money is the challenge of paying off credit card debt. And one of the best resources available to people struggling with credit card debt is nonprofit credit counseling. I'm here with Thomas Nitchie from ClearPoint, one of the largest and most trusted credit counseling agencies around. So Thomas, what's your best advice for someone who is struggling with credit card debt?
Sure, that's a great question. The first thing we tell everybody who comes to seek counseling from ClearPoint is they need to start with a good spending plan. So putting together a budget. Most of the people we meet with have never done that, and it's a really important first step in getting a financial snapshot of where you're at, and then getting their goals to find out where they want to be, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, in order to really get a good action plan in place to figure out how they're going to get there.
So Thomas, where can people go to find out more information?
They can go to www.hisandhermoney.com/ClearPoint to get more information about ClearPoint, who we are, and what we do.
And now back to the show.
You got to track where the money's going. And I know that's hard work, and I know that's no fun, and I know it's, boring, write things down on a legal pad or track them with an app like Mint or Level Money. But I've been doing this for a really long time. And what I know is that when you start tracking your spending honestly, it's very much like keeping a food diary. I mentioned the book Age Proof that I have coming out in March. I wrote it with a wonderful doctor named Michael Roizen, who co-authored all the U books with Dr. Oz. And he talks about tracking your calories, tracking what's going in and what's going out. And it's so similar to tracking your spending. There's unfortunately no shortcut to this. And just like you can't out-exercise a bad diet, you can't, in many cases, out-earn overwhelming spending. If you're spending too much, it's just too hard to increase your income so quickly to get around it. Instead, you have to adjust your spending. You have to control the things that you can control. So pay attention to the numbers. Go in, track your spending, see where your money's going. You will be shocked. You will be surprised, and you'll make adjustments. You'll deal with it. I worked with a woman from Portland, Maine, recently. She and her husband were just in a sort of phase of life where they were changing. They were about to enter into retirement, and they were spending so fast that they knew that their money wasn't going to last. And we talked about the fact that something had to give. And so I got them tracking their spending. They were, as I said, totally shocked. They cut their spending in half in very short order. So it's possible, but you do have to do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what would you suggest a couple do? Should they sit down together to create a budget, or should one person do it?
Together's always better if you guys can make some time, some quiet time without the kids around, sit down together and do it. And I like to back into a budget. I like to look at where my money has been going. I think creating a budget out of thin air is really, really difficult. So if you can take a backwards look at where your money's been going the past couple of months, it makes it a lot easier.
And what would you say after someone creates their budget? Maybe after they've already put 15% away in retirement or savings, what should they do with the extra that's left over at the end of the month?
Have a party? No, look, here, my philosophy on this is that if you've got extra money to save at certain times in your life, save it. Yeah. If you're saying, what should I do with this extra $1,000 or $500 or $300, whatever we're talking about, and you don't have a good reason for doing something with that money, don't do anything with that money. Just put it away, because I'm telling you, life will come along. And at some point, there will be something that you want to do with that money, whether it's help pay for college for your kids, help pay for an important vacation, put an addition on your house, fix up the kitchen. There will be a use for that money. If you don't know what it is right now, don't do anything.
You know, along those lines, at the top of the episode, you kind of mentioned that the fact that a lot of times couples come into a relationship with the false notion that everything is alike, you know, same goals, aspirations, dreams. And oftentimes that's not the case. So when you find out that maybe you have different viewpoints about this aspect of money, or you have this financial goal where your spouse has that financial goal, like how do you bring all that together, find some middle ground so that you all can, even though you have these differences, somehow work together to meet them all?
It's really important. I have this article clipped out of the Wall Street Journal from many years ago, and it's an article about retirement. And the headline is, "He says Maine, she says Florida." And that just says everything to me. There are so many couples who are not on the same page about their money, in part because they've just never, ever talked about it. And particularly when you get to retirement, this can be a big deal. You can be totally surprised that this person that you've been living with for 3 decades wants something totally different than you want. And so I think once a month, if you can do it, my husband and I do this. And I think it's the most romantic part of money. You just sit down and you dream a little bit and you talk about, all right, where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going on vacation in the short term? Where are we going in our living situation and our careers over the next 5 years and 10 years. And by doing this together, pour yourself a glass of wine, sit down, have a nice dinner, and talk about where do we want to be. And it's the we in it that makes it exciting, that makes it fun. My husband and I were on a wonderful trip a couple of weeks ago. We were in Amsterdam, and I looked around, I said, I could live here for a month or two. And we started talking about what would that take? What would that take when both of us are working a little less? Could we do some sort of a home share where somebody lived in our place in New York and we actually lived in their place in Amsterdam? And would that be fun, or would we hate it? It's that kind of stuff that gets you on the same page.
Love it.
Yeah. Now, what about that couple where you have one spouse who wants to talk, who wants to create that conversation, who wants to dream with their spouse, but their spouse is a little apprehensive about talking about money, in any type of way? We found that sometimes they have a spouse that just is sensitive to the topic of money and kind of shuns and shies away from the conversation at all. I mean, how can that spouse kind of find some way to get their spouse to kind of come close when it comes to that topic?
I think there are a couple of ways to do it, but it's very understandable, right? We all come to relationships with baggage from our previous experiences in life. And if those experiences with money have been negative, then you're not going to want to talk about them. And I get it. A financial planner, a financial advisor, some sort of professional, an accountant, a lawyer, a respected professional can be very helpful in this kind of a situation, because it can draw out the spouse or partner who's reluctant to talk. But the other thing that you can do, and this may sound silly, but it's worked for a lot of people that I know. If you've got a spouse or partner who really doesn't want to discuss this, and they come along and they say to you, "What do you want for your birthday?" You can say, "This is what I want. I want you to take me out to dinner, and I want us to have a conversation about our future." Don't say you're going to have a conversation about money, because really you are talking about money, but you're talking about the larger aspects of it. I want to have a conversation about what we want in our future and how we're going to get there. And we may need some help to actually hit all the benchmarks between here and there. That's solvable. We can hire somebody to help us with that. We can find tools to help us with that. We need to decide if we want to be a strong family unit where we want to go.
Awesome.
That's good.
Now, for that family, that couple, or even that individual who is looking to turn their financial situation around, to realize the error of their ways, kind of like I did early on in our marriage. I was at the place where I was tired of doing all the wrong things, getting to the end of every month, wondering where the money went. And there was that point where I was like, man, I'm ready to turn this thing around. when a person finds themselves in that position where they're fed up and they want to change, but they're not sure how to change or even where to begin when it comes to getting their finances in order, what are some of your money rules that you would lay out for them to put into place?
When you know you want to make any change, but you're not sure what to do, that's exactly when you get help. It's when you go to a new doctor to help you turn around your health. It's when you go to a personal trainer to help you get your fitness in line. It's when you hire a decorator so that you don't spend a huge amount of money painting your house the wrong color. That's when you go for help with your finances. And it doesn't mean that you have to hire somebody and keep them on the payroll forever. You can hire somebody for a few hours and sit down and come up with some sort of a plan that you can put into practice, you and your spouse, yourselves.
Awesome.
Great advice. Can you tell our audience more about all of your great resources that you offer and how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So the one I really want them to know about is my podcast. It's for women. It's called Her Money. You can get it on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud. And we're really excited. We've had some amazing conversations on the podcast and we're getting some great response. So I'm excited about that. My website is JeanChatzky.com. My Twitter handle is @JeanChatzky. And the new book is called Age Proof. And again, it'll be out at the beginning of March.
Awesome. We'll be sure to have links to all of those resources inside the show notes of this episode. You can go to hisandhermoney.com and find Jean's episode, and you will see all the links there. To close this out, Jean, if there's somebody listening right now who loved your advice, heard it, took it to heart, but they feel maybe a little bit overwhelmed about the prospect or even the potential of being able to get their finances in order, they're just wondering if they have what it takes, what words of encouragement would you offer to them?
I would say two things. I would say, first of all, I've been where you are, and if I could turn it around, then anybody can turn it around. And number two, don't try to boil the ocean. Just do one small thing that makes you feel good and that you're headed in the right direction. It could be paying a bill. It could be saving something. It could be making a phone call to somebody who could help you. It could be listening to this podcast. Do one small thing. Acknowledge that you did it, feel good about it, and then try to do another small thing tomorrow.
Incredible advice. Jean, this was great. And we are truly thankful that you took some time out of your busy schedule to do this interview and share your knowledge with our audience today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wow, that was incredible. I mean, her advice, as always, is on point and super duper practical. That's why we're such a big fan of Jean Chatzky, and that's why we wanted to have her on the show so that she can share her wisdom with you guys. Be sure to pick up a copy of her new book, Age Proof. We know it's going to be fantastic. We've read plenty of her other books. One of our favorites is Money Rules. That's another one you guys are going to want to check out. But just know this, wherever you are on this financial journey of yours, there is hope. You can get things turned around. It's not over. Today could be the best day, the first day of the rest of your financial life. That does it for this episode of the His and Her Money Show. Don't forget, you can always check us out over at our website, hisandhermoney.com. Here it is. No matter where you are on the road to financial freedom, the key is to start now and finish strong.
Thanks for tuning in to the His and Her Money Show. For more information on how to win with your finances, be sure to visit www.hisandhermoney.com.